Hello, Michael, my friend. Good to see you, mate. How are you doing?
Good morning, Carl. How you doing? Good, good, good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making the time for us today. Thank you for joining the roller coaster.
Oh yeah. hmm
Yeah, we've just been on the road together, and you've been such a legend, and you've got. I'm pretty sure you've got so many stories that while we're on the road, we're every day working so much, we don't have the chance to actually sit and talk. So here we are today, and
hmm
thanks for making the time, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. That was a fun little tour we just did. That was a pleasure working with you on, and I mean, we've already all discussed it many times, but it was a great little package.
It
Two
really
good bands.
was, really was. Mike, before we get into all the touring stuff, I always tend to start from the very beginning with everyone to try and understand a little
hmm
bit, the path that led you into working in the music industry. So, if you could just tell us a little bit about where were you born, how was your upbringing, and where did you go to school, and yeah, that would be great, please. And we're gonna dive into
Yeah, man.
musical influences and all that in a minute as well.
Yeah, not much to tell. I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. I went to we lived there just briefly. I moved around a lot as a kid. I've been moving around my whole life. So we lived in Knoxville, moved right to Chattanooga, where my mother's family was from. A couple of years there, to Richmond, Virginia, to Houston, Texas, to Washington D.C. So we kind of settled in that in different suburbs of Washington D.C. for most of the rest of my life. But definitely spent a lot of my childhood in Tennessee, visiting family. We were just always going on trips. I remember staying in hotels as a kid. Always in hotels. I loved hotels. I always loved staying in hotels. I don't know what it was. I loved the trips we took as a family. So travel was kind of always, and I did a lot of travel as a kid. So I've just always moved around. I was never in one school for very long. I just never, but the DC area is where I kind of settled down. We lived in many suburbs of Washington D.C. So I grew up my childhood pretty much in Washington, Baltimore, music scene. So I had like the good thing in my childhood that brought me to where I am today probably was having music in my life. My parents had music all the time. So my mother, being born in Tennessee, was an Elvis fan. Everyone was, and country music. So that was always playing in the house. And I'm a big Elvis fan. Elvis is the king. The other side was my dad's record collection of 50s music because he grew up in DC. So he had all the hot 50s, 60s music at the time. I mean, as a kid, I had his stacks of 45s and vinyl and everything from the early 50s stuff into Glenn Campbell and whatever's around. But I had the 45s of like Elvis Presley, Hound Dog, the original RCA pressings, Jailhouse Rock, all that stuff. So I would sit in my room and just, saturate into that. And I just remember I was probably 4 years old in Tennessee, and we had Sears catalogs at the time, big, thick. That was the Amazon of the '60s. Born in '66, and in that catalog they had musical instruments, and they had drum sets. And there were 3 drum sets in that catalog, and that was an early obsession I had. I just remember sitting at home in that catalog. Man, there were microphones and stuff. It was before even Radio Shack, where you could go look at some of that stuff. It was kind of the other place that we had to go look at stuff as a kid. So I don't know where drums came into it, other than in my childhood, we would go out a lot we would go to on these vacations. My parents would go to the bar at night, and me and my brother would tag along. There was always a top 40 band playing, and nobody cared back then. We could sit in the bar. The top 40 band, I would just sit in the corner and stare at a drummer playing drum bass for the whole thing. Like the whole concept of 4 guys or 3 guys making music, and music was in my life already. So music was very important to me as a kid. I was very, very, very diverse musical taste all over the fucking place. There's not much I don't like. So that just kind of permeated my life, and I would say having moved around a lot and very issues in life and whatnot, music was what I had to hang on to, and it's the only thing I really took to. It's all I wanted to do. I mean, as a kid, we were bike riding and skateboarding was, all day long. Maybe that's the other thing I did, but music really was it. So I was around a lot of bands as a kid. That was just I couldn't understand. So when I was 10 years old, and I was way into music, I had a little band with my neighbor. We would sit in the house and try and play these songs. I was taking music classes at school and stuff, of course, but Kiss, Kiss was number one on my list, and I got to see Kiss, my first concert, 1977, Washington D.C.,
Wow.
Capitol Center.
Wow.
Kiss Alive 2. Me, my dad, my brother, and that kind of rocked my world a little bit. Interestingly, that was, of course, a theatrical rock band. Lots of costume, wardrobe, pyro. I have been working for those kind of acts primarily in my life, for whatever reason. And I've always been drawn to that. And I'm a big fan of more heavy theatrical side of rock bands. I don't think bands like, 311's a great band. Bands like that take nothing away, but there's just three guys in t-shirts and shorts, and I don't get it. But a theatrical rock band, even like other versions of that, it wouldn't have been theatrical as much, but even like Whitesnake and bands that were themed and had a show. That's always been very important to me, and I've always studied that aspect of music and bands and stuff. So yeah, I lived in DC. I went to concerts. That's all we did. We had great nightclubs in Washington DC and Baltimore. Baltimore had a heavy rock blues scene. DC, heavy rock blues scene. Georgetown, lots of bars. Remember, the drinking age was 18 when I was growing up, and I missed it by like a day, but they didn't care, and everyone was grandfathered in who was within a certain range. So going into bars, I was going into bars when I was 16, 15. It was just again, nobody cared. So I was going to see all these bands play. Baltimore had the hard rock metal scene, and I got a lot of both, man. And I went to high school, most of my school in outside of Washington D.C. The day I turned 18. My buddy picked me up. We got in his car and we went to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I left home, man. I was just done with the cold weather, and I was just driven in life to do other stuff. And living in this little town we were in DC, it's cool, but wasn't where I was going to spend my days. And so I settled in North Miami pretty quick and lived in Miami for the next 15 years, working in the industry. But that's the growing up part to that point. So.
So you have one brother, or do you have any other siblings?
Yeah, one brother 3 years younger. Yep. Very close.
And you guys were sharing the same taste for music, it seems, because you were attending concerts together.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
our tastes are very similar. His varied, but yeah, of course.
And what about that record collection that belonged to your dad? Does that still exist, or is that gone?
I have nothing probably more than a couple of years old in my life. I have no idea where that ended up. I wish I did. No, I have nothing from the past. I don't collect stuff per se or hold on to stuff very long. I'm kind of minimalistic in that way, but yeah, that was a gift. And all that 50s music, by the way, there was a lot of that stuff in me. Even as a kid, like, I don't hear it on radio. You don't hear it. If you didn't get into that stuff and explore that collection, find this stuff, you wouldn't have known. But it had its own theatrical elements to it. There were a lot of those 50s bands. Those songs were journeys. Those songs had sound effects in them. They were storytelling, which is another thing I like about a song. A song should be. I like songs that tell a story a lot. It was always great, but that 50s stuff was very interesting. Early versions of rock that carved the way for what we have now. But it was a lot of great musical education in there.
Did you ever, since music was so important for you on your teens and starting to basically attend concerts and hanging with your brother and all of that. Have you ever like formed bands yourself? Have you ever like intended to like be an artist yourself, or what was the what led you to when you moved to North Miami and started picking up on jobs? What were those jobs, and what was the did you have any goal, anywhere that you wanted to go to, or you just wanted to be involved with music in whichever form it would present to you?
Yeah, yeah. When I was younger, playing music, I didn't know there was an industry. I mean, early on it was. I took music, snare drum in, I don't know, 7 years old or something. Snare drum, flute, piano. Took a few things, but I did not excel at those things. It didn't come as naturally to me as a musician as it does to somebody who has that gift. But the industry side, when I saw this Kiss concert, that was the first time I saw the industry side. That was the first time I saw all the roadies rush the stage and start tearing down the gear, setting up gear. I remember seeing guys walking across the truss before the show, and all that stuff was very fascinating to me. Everybody was wearing black, and it was coordinated. And how did those lights get up there? And who? And so the records at the time, vinyl, you open it up, what's inside it? Credits, and it says who did what. That was my section of a record. I opened that up, and it would say, who did the artwork. Sometimes it would list who the road crew was, and it always fascinated me. How do you get that job? How do you get? So I always had that fascination, and I guess even as a kid, when I was hanging out with these bands, I was looking at the cables, I was looking at how the inputs, I was looking at how does this come together? So there was a separation. I knew I was maybe not the artist in that sense that's going to play the instrument, but I did have the desire to do things in the industry and to work for those bands and to work in that end of it. So that's what ended up happening, of course.
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely not this industry. It's definitely not an industry that you um, apply for jobs per se with a tailored CV and things like that. It's a lot of like what you used to do, reading the booklets, trying to understand what's what, and then attending concerts and befriending someone, and eventually
Mm-hmm.
working for free on occasion, acquiring experience, and then eventually
Absolutely.
you just find your
Absolutely.
way into the industry, isn't it? So when you were in Miami for
Yeah.
like 15 years, what were you doing there to maintain your life there, basically?
Hanging out with bands. I mean, so I, for the only other thing I did in my whole life, I mean, that I was focused, that I got into was sailboat racing. So when we were living in Maryland, I got on sailboats and I was racing sailboats and I was working in that industry for many years. And that was probably where I was very happy there. Was doing very well. I had good jobs. But I was racing sailboats. And when I moved to Fort Lauderdale, that's the first thing. I mean, that's what we moved there for. That was a bigger industry there, and that was kind of. But I was hanging out at the nightclubs, and I was much more. My mind was in that side. Was, there was a club in Fort Lauderdale called Summers on the Beach that started hanging out at. There was a band there, and I've always had an eye for talent. I've always known, which is part of the reason I like to play. As far as playing an instrument, look, I'm not going to do it if I can't be the best at it. And I knew what good drummers were, and I knew what I was. I was acquainted to the relationship between like a race car driver or like a NASCAR. The mechanic can't drive the car as fast as the driver can. The driver can't make the car go as fast as the mechanic can. So there's one or the other. I just was good at the other end of it. So in my experience in working on sailboats, actually translated a lot to what I do now. Because I was working with rigging and in metals and different issues with stability, and there's a lot of similarity I could get into about tuning sailboat rigs and tuning drums. There's actually a lot of weird similarities. But so I was hanging out at the club. I got to be friends with this band I fell in love with called Gypsy Queen in Miami. They were by far the most successful sort of touring. See, at that time, all these bands, you were a band that did originals, but you had to do covers to make a living. So there was an incredible club circuit in Florida. All the bands worked the whole state. You go to a club on Monday, load in, play 6 nights, load out on Sunday, go to the next club. You could do that year round and make a great living in the state of Florida. But you do your originals, you develop yourself as an original artist, but you're doing the covers 75% of the night. So this band was very popular, but their originals were insane. They were just an amazing band. So there's this drummer, the bass player was the bass player from Pat Travers' band, Mars Cowling. Got to be friends with all those guys. So at the same time, there was another kid hanging out there because we were kids at the time, and me and him got to be friends. We were helping the band. Now, this is coming into what you just said about working for free and whatnot. Of course, I was doing load-outs, helping bands load in, load out every day, every night. There were a lot of bands coming through that I got to be friends with. This Pink Floyd tribute band from Canada that I was working for every time they were in town. So things that started developing, I would sit and study how the guys were moving gear in and out, learning. It was just boot camp, Summers was boot camp. I help all these bands load in and out. They knew me there. I had a pass to get in. I got lucky, and Gypsy Queen was getting ready to start a tour. Two of the members of the crew quit, and my friend that I was recently friends with got hired first. And he came and found me, and he said, "Hey, we're leaving in a couple of days. Can you go?" And at that time, I was hired to do lights and help backline. It was just two of us. He was doing guitars, and we had a front of house guy. So I said, "Of course." And I took a lighting rig. It was nothing. It was 25, 30 par cans and dimmer racks that. A little Leprechaun lighting console, and we went on the road in the state of Florida for like a year and a half, and supporting a lot of bigger acts. That was my real boot camp. So that band got signed to Polygram. Jack Douglas, Aerosmith producer, produced the record. So that was my first time in the studio. We came home and we went in the studio and recorded that record. Still my favorite record and band, probably. Most of my whole life. It was great music. They did the record. It came out and didn't do as well in the United States as it should have. Things got complicated. It was the usual, like the executive producer was running cocaine between New York and LA, and money didn't get spent on the record and stuff. 80s. It's amazing how many great bands I've seen not see the light of day. I've seen that a lot. It happens.
And it's hard to believe that the Miami of today could have been like a hot spot for music venues and rock bands and pop bands, even, because it's such a different scenario when you go to Miami nowadays. But you did get to experience it in the 80s, right? So that must have been super exciting.
At the time, it was music. So North Miami was the North Hollywood of the East Coast. North Miami had several well-known recording studios. You had Criteria and Quadradial, and bands. All the big acts would come to Florida, lock out a studio for a couple of weeks during the wintertime where it was warm, and they record. Famously, the Bee Gees, Miami Sound Machine, all that stuff, but everybody recorded down there. Criteria and Quadradial, it's just incredible how many. And there are other studios, but anyway, it had a great music scene. It had had a metal scene. Marilyn Manson came out of that club scene that I was in. Saigon Kick came out of that. Malevolent Creation. There were a lot of bands that came out of that South Florida rock scene that does not exist anymore, to your point. If you go down there today and look around, it's like, what? How did all that happen here back then? It just went away, man. All the clubs went away in the 90s, 2000s. That circuit went away. Summers, everybody played Summers, by the way. That played Summers in their career. But the button was, all these clubs were 6 a.m., by the way, at that time. And you do 6 sets a night. In Miami, you're doing 6 sets a night. You're getting off work at 7 a.m.
6 sets a night?
Yeah.
Wow.
6. Everyone does 6 sets a night. It's all 6 a.m. clubs. So you go through all that. So the Button South had an interesting thing going on. That was where I kind of lived there for the most part, because touring, at the time, Gypsy Queen, all that, you come home. I mean, look, we were all doing a lot of drugs. That's what everyone was. There was a lot. So you come home with no money. You go to the Button South, maybe meet a girl or just run into somebody, figure out a place to stay until you go back on the road next week or something. It just kind of worked that way. Everybody functioned through the Button South. And it was the live music, definitely rock capital of, South Florida, a lot of the East Coast. That was a great time. And that was boot camp. That was next level boot camp. They had great production there, and they did a weird thing every night. So there was a thing called 2112. No, you won't see this happening these days, but 2112 was they had two bands every night play. So the first band plays two sets. You strike. The second band comes up, does one set. They strike. The first band comes back, does their set, strikes. The second band comes back and does their two sets.
Oh my god!
So you had set changes. You had set changes at night, but that was cool too because you got some action and you got to work. You got to do that. You got to do that. That was like boot camp. And so me and my friend, we started back then with Gypsy Queen. I see him now all the time. He's had a great career, and the two of us. I mean, just before I started the Pyro tour, he was checking into a hotel in West Hollywood that we were checking out of. So me and AJ got to hang out for a few minutes, and we just both sit and we just sort of like stare. We're like, what the fuck? I mean, we started together in '86. That's when all that happened, you know. So we've been lifelong friends and touring, but we have that history. We spent that year and a half together with that band in those venues in Miami in the '80s on a, you know, hard, tough club scene. It was cool.
And what happened to Gypsy Queen? Did they, after this tour? I mean, did the whole band? Did the band?
They did well in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. They put a second record out. They had some success in Europe. It just got messed up in the United States. They should have had. The songs are great to this day. The songs could be released. It's still one of my favorite bands. But it was two twin redhead female lead singers, traded vocals all night long. It was an amazing band. And so I did that. And then the band kind of changed personnel, and the bass player, who was originally Mars Kelly, did all the records with Pat Travers, one of the best bass players in the world. Pat got hired back by Pat Travers. Pat needed a drummer. Mars recommended Keith. That's who I was working for at Gypsy Queen. A little while later, Keith called me and asked if I would be a drum tech for Pat Travers band, and that was my first sort of national full drum tech on the road, going tour. So,
and that from that basically just kept on picking up on jobs and progressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One went to another.
Very cool. Very cool.
Tour managed back then. Got to go to Europe in the '80s, and do a lot of cool stuff.
Oh, you came over to Europe on tour in the '80s, yeah?
Yeah, I was looking for Bobby Kimball, the lead singer from Toto. And that was my first time in Europe. But we were heavy in the U.S. and Canada. A lot of Canada back then. Pat was a Canadian-born artist who was very popular there. So we spent months and months in Canada. And that was hard. It was hard touring. I mean, that was,
non-stop.
That was not tour. Yeah, that was not tour buses. And I mean, we were driving a lot. We had backline truck. We were self-driving, and we were young and obviously partying a lot, so there's not a lot of sleep going on. They were hard days. They were hard days.
I mean, staying on the road for such a long period of time with the same group of people for a long time, it's always very draining. It can, no, it's not always, it can be very draining, regardless of how good the relationships are. And back in the 80s, with all the partying and all, the lack of sleep and probably people being very tired at work, I can only imagine that some people would just not be on top of their game all the time. Did you see a lot of people come and go during that period? How did you manage yourself to still be part of the whole thing, and still show up and do the job? And not only that, but what is there anything in particular that you remember that you took out of it from the relationships with these people, from relationships with these people in regards to how to operate? Because every day showing up and then having to deal with A, B, C, D, E, and not always being in 100% affinity, let's put it this way, with people, and then you add the lack of sleep and some beers here and there and whatever else. So what do you remember from that period in regards to those bits?
I remember it was very carefree. Look, I never let myself go too far in any direction. I was always able to do my job. Why am I getting a timer?
Yeah, me too.
I was okay there.
Yeah, back.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. Um, yeah, there were very carefree days. I mean, there was a lot of leeway, especially if you were touring sort of in club circuits and stuff. But I never let myself get to a point where I couldn't do my job. We always, you know, I was very professional. I maintained a professional around the situation that was going on. But you got to remember, like, I mean, that band, the when your boss is the head party, when he's the master ringleader of his one of his biggest songs is snorting whiskey and drinking cocaine. Play it, Travers, snorting whiskey, drinking. One of the greatest rock songs to this day. That was a big hit for him, and that's what life was. I mean, our job was to acquire drugs, So it's not like you got scolded but but I always had a professional. I was never out there to party. We did, but that's not what I ever felt like I was out there for. I was very much wanted to have a career, and I wanted to meet people. See, you didn't have internet then, so finding jobs and all that stuff was a little bit different. You didn't have the things we have today, resources and communication and stuff. So you had to meet people, you had to develop relationships. So every gig we did with other bands, we would be on bills with other acts at the time, less Southern rock bands, Molly Hatchet and Outlaws, and Survivor, all these bands. You wanted to meet the other crew and know everybody and try and work your way into your next job and have friends out there. So that was a very important thing. But otherwise, it was those days you couldn't get in trouble. I mean, after shows, we would go back to the hotel. We would bring 60 people back to a hotel room. Nobody. Every once in a while, a security guy might come up and say, "Hey, some people are complaining about noise or something," but not like you were going to get in trouble. And just again,
Sounds like a
yeah,
lot of fun.
I never got arrested. I never had a legal problem or anything. But you couldn't do all that today. Wouldn't get 5 minutes in today's world with what we got away with then.
Yes, absolutely.
Just fact. But so to that point though, touring also, yeah, it was different because you didn't have phones. You got in every city. You had to call the promoter to get directions into the venue. You had to check the hotel and check you had to call the agency to get your messages. You didn't have phones. You had a phone in your hotel room that was expensive at the time. You couldn't even use it. So you had pay phones. There was no pagers. It was before pagers. You had a random McNally map to get you to the next city. But also the cool thing is that travel at the time was much more interesting because you're going into places like Texas. Texas was like the foreign country at the time. You go there, you got ranches. You grew up on the East Coast, I think. You got ranches and people and wearing cowboy hats and boots. It's like going to Vegas. Vegas at the time was another dimension in time. Just not. But my point is now because of internet and your ability to drop into any city on YouTube and we all know things today. The world is plagiarized. You can go almost anywhere in the world. There's only a few places that are really different now. In America especially it's all the same pretty much now, unless you're in. The only exceptions would be like New Orleans. I mean, obviously like Chicago and Manhattan. There's a couple, but 99 out of 100 days day off in the United States. You're just on an intersection with a Starbucks, a Home Depot, a Target, and it's all the same. It's not. So touring was very fun back then. Going to California was always fun, but it was new also. It was your first time just going around to a lot of these places.
Man, sounds amazing.
But it's very memorable. It is very memorable. It's very memorable. I have a lot of vivid, wonderful memories from experiences back then that will certainly not happen again. Not that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I always say that if I could, I wish I could have experienced a little bit of all of that, because you always get to hear those stories and myths and read about it, and there's all this mystique around rock bands, what they used to do back in the day and how things used to be.
Yeah.
And obviously nowadays to a certain extent it's so much better for workers, I guess.
It is.
But it's also, it can be quite boring at times as well, because it's so, You go to like, you know, backstages and it's all super quiet and organized and clean. You almost feel guilty if you like speaking on the phone out loud because there might be somebody in the next room doing whatever else, you know, or if you're gearing up to go do your gig and then you just want to play some tunes on a Bluetooth speaker. Is this too loud, you know, for people next door? There's always this, and you're just about to go on stage and play like live music and guitars and drums and all that. So I have no complaints really, but there's a part of me that wish I could have experienced a little bit of, you know, the madness, the normality that it used to be behind, well, backstage with those parties. And obviously so many bands that used to basically create themed parties backstage for the after shows and things like that. I spent a lot of money on it. Some very famous stories about Guns N' Roses during the Illusions tour that they used to have a designated person just to set up those themed parties backstage after show. I mean, the amount of money that just went into those, you know, not that they cared, but you know, it's anyway. There's all those things that the one can only wonder, you know. In my case, and you got to experience it. It's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I got to experience more of it than I did. It was I got a lot, but I knew people that were living a whole different life than I was on other tours, you know. But it was a different mindset. Everything about it was different, you know. And yeah, after show, everybody piles in dressing rooms. It was a party that went on to the hotel afterwards and whatnot. But drugs, I mean, like cocaine was just, if you had cocaine, you were the man. You know, it's like today you get kicked out of the venue for it. You know, like you're saying, trying to keep your music too low or something. Mm-hmm. So it was just a different times. But I'm glad I got to experience what I did, and so. But listen, make no mistake, touring it may be boring today because it is sort of it's everything's a lot more organized now and things have. So back then, first of all, you had to get paid every night in cash. 50% of the money would have been sent to the agency. You had to pick up 50% balance due in cash before putting the band on stage. So as a tour manager, that was your struggle. And if you were doing club circuits and stuff, which I was for many years, that was the struggle. So getting paid was always difficult. And you're walking around with all this cash. Mm-hmm. And you're counting out cash. You're sitting in a trailer with stacks of 20s, having to count it 5 times to come up with $5,000, you know, whatever it was. But there were definitely some issues getting paid, and pay disputes and contract disputes were not always easily settled on those levels. I had a guy pull a gun on me more than once in contract settlements. I had guys that had been threatened. I mean, you would be in the South and have it's just not the Live Nation days we have now where money gets wired after the show. you're getting paid, I think, today pretty well everywhere. But so it was a bit the Wild West back then. And of course you were getting robbed on dates all the time. I mean, just, you know, they would sell you, you have a contract for a capacity of 750 or something, and you get there and it's twice that or something like that, you know, and then you have to renegotiate while you're there. They don't want to renegotiate. And the club owner's brother is the sheriff in town, so there's nobody to call, and he's got bouncers following you around the club now because you put the band back on the bus until you get paid. There were all kinds of things.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. Those I don't envy at all. It must have been so much harder for a tour manager back on those days. I mean, I think so. For all the things that you're mentioning now that I didn't even thought of it during this conversation, but also to maintain the band and the tour entourage on the road with all the parties and all of those things combined. It must have been so difficult for someone to lead the pack back on those days.
I think so. Yeah, I was tour managing a little bit then too, and advancing hotels and all that. Again, you had payphones, you know, so communication just wasn't always the easiest. You had the fax. Fax wasn't. I don't think faxes were even a thing when I was tour managing. I think that came shortly after. You didn't have the resources that you have now. That's a fact. Or the organization. Mm-hmm. Things are very well run today. Doing a club tour today can be pretty nice, pretty easy. Most of these clubs have.
All good.
I don't remember Yeah, I don't remember it doing that before,
Me
timing out
neither.
so
Me
quickly.
neither. Yeah, I mean, I've never done actually podcasts over Zoom, so now uh, it's clear to me that I will either upgrade it or Zoom is is a no go. I think every half an hour it cuts you off. It's really odd, but it's okay. All good.
Yeah, I didn't used to do that, but we're back.
We're back. So Mike,
So,
yeah, funny man. I mean, honestly, um, I never really thought of. I was always inspired and very intrigued by looking at tour books and booklets and also going through the liner notes and checking, who's who and what's the equipment that the bands are using. I remember looking at live album booklets, and not all bands would
hmm
list the gear that they would be using, but some would, and then I would be so intrigued and not really understanding like what is this mic doing here, but why does the guy has three mics? Why does the singer has three mics? I mean, things like that, and then just trying to understand what's what. Because I was singing back in the day as well. I started myself as a musician, and so I was always intrigued to know what kind of mics were my heroes using. So super cool. I mean, looking at your trajectory, it's like, I mean, how did you end up like not end up, but like how did you get to work with like Mariah Carey, and then obviously from there you progressed and you toured with Mariah Carey. You worked with Mariah Carey, Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper, Orianthi. I mean, the list is just super vast. But tell us a little bit about the experience with Mariah Carey. That's a very interesting one.
it's like 2009 Christmas. She does a Christmas tour every year, a couple of weeks. They just did one last year as well. I was doing teleprompter and working in the production office. It was fine. It was like a 2 week U.S. tour, 2 or 3 weeks rehearsals, and great production manager Malcolm Weldon. You know, I was just there to learn a lot about working with those guys, and they were probably one of the best crews, best put together. It was a tough, like it was 7 or more trucks in theaters, and she had a play that went around the inside of the building on a track.
Wow.
It was a lot of production to hang. Video wall. Yeah, that was like 2009, I think. Good experience. I mean, look, everything I've done is good. I like what I do. I like people. I like, you were talking about being on a tour for a long time could get monotonous or something like that. I personally don't. I like to be on tour a long time. I don't like being home. That's my thing. It's true. It's just I'm happy on the road. I can be on the road forever. That's my environment. That when the pandemic hit, we all talked about this. The hard thing was we all realized like our environment is unique. Our being in the building is a unique. Uh, that's where you live. You're with stagehands. You're with local crew. You're a crew. You're in the darkness, the dark theaters, your day to day routine, everything that works. That's your environment. So when the pandemic hit, everybody lost that, and now we're just sitting at home trying to figure out what to. Some people better at it with others than others, but I like to work. I don't like to be home. So that's my whole thing.
When did you decide to move from Florida? And did you move straight away to California from Florida, or did you live elsewhere?
Oh, so in 1990, I started working for a booking agency that was representing a lot of the bands I was working for. I was talking to a few people. I wanted to be an agent, and the agency that I had been working with already ended up hiring me. So I moved into up a little bit north in Florida into Boca Raton for 6 years, and I was a booking agent. And now I was booking Starship, Kansas, Survivor, um, Pat Travers, Molly Hatchet, all these 80s Kansas early on. Um, so I did that for 6 years. When that job ended, took a year off, and film production was very big in South Florida, feature film production. the states had started issuing film credits. Florida had a very large film community. Everybody was shooting in feature film in Florida, like everybody used to go to record in Florida. Everybody would come down. And so that was very interesting to me. And I kind of walked right into that industry one day. And my first film, I worked in film production down there for a few years. My first film was Any Given Sunday. I don't know if you remember that film. Very big feature film. I got hired to do multiple things on that. It was a great experience. It was new. So I worked in feature film for the next few years. I moved to LA in 2000, and I came out here to work on a feature film, and I worked in feature film out here for several years, as well as doing some band stuff. So I've done other things in my life besides just tour. Thank God, because I've got an education and other stuff. I've worked in all ends of the industry now.
Yeah, you're
more or
so
less.
well rounded. I mean, now that you mentioned that you worked as an agent, I mean, you have been in so many different areas. I mean, pretty much all
I've
the areas.
Worked in lots of different areas. That's the thing.
Yeah.
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 Except for management, which is something I want to do. Management or event production. What would be my next move? That I've been talking to a few companies and sort of trying to work my way into, because I can't. I'm happy. I've got a couple years on the road, and I could maybe migrate more to tour managing these days instead of drum teching. Drum teching is just physically hard on the body. So I would do that. I would also look to work for a management company, or I like event production, producing festivals, like working for Danny Wimmer or one of those guys, somebody like that. I like to, but you can't do the same thing in life all the time. I mean, you never grow, you never learn, sort of. I like to move around and do other stuff.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, it's
definitely done drums for a long time. So
yeah.
But I did film. Film was great. I was assisting producers. So I was working for producers a lot, which was a huge education. And I worked in the finance end of it for a number of years as a production accountant, as an assistant production accountant. And then back to touring in 2008-ish, full time. So, it's just sort of what do you do next to expand and to grow and to learn?
Of course, yes. Do you have any? Are you a spiritual person at all? Do you have or follow any spirituality? Do you have anything? Any opinions about that?
Spiritual, not religious. I'll tell you that. But yeah. So I don't really have a lot to say about that. I'm not.
Do you have any practices? I mean, do you practice at all? Like, do you do it? No.
Not particularly. Not particularly.
Do you believe that there's something else, or do you believe that this experience is all there is?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm not a fan of religion in any way. I don't care if anybody else is. It's everyone's business. I believe there's an intelligent universe. What's up in outer space is, it's so fascinating. Obviously, if you see these photographs, especially with the new telescope that's out there, and you see these just bright jellyfish-looking structures, and of course, it's all energy. There's light up there. There's fire. There's planets moving around each other. They're eventually combining, exploding, and creating new universes and black holes. Everything up there is moving and changing. Everything up there is alive. So there's an intelligent universe. We're just a little piece of it. And I mean, that's how I look at life this way. You were alive. You were on a piece of rock with a molten core. It is traveling 73,000 miles an hour, revolving around a burning ball of hydrogen that is going to go out. I mean, how seriously, you got to just wake up every day and live your life. You got to be a nice person. That's the only thing I can say is that the highest, when you die, the highest calling there is in life, the best thing you could have done is help somebody else and be a nice person in life and help other people. That's about the highest calling in life there is. You can be a scientist, you can be a doctor, you can be all these things, but so Yeah, I believe in that. I believe in there's definitely a higher power. There's definitely something else at play here that we're a part of, unquestionably. You know, I don't know why people get. Imagine this. Here we are on this rock. Here we are having this experience, and now look at our planet. There's war everywhere. All these countries are bombing each other, shooting each other up, killing each other. We haven't figured out anything. My whole theory is that we're just in the infancy. Imagine, how me and you would look back at life like 200 years ago. They were riding horses and had to light candles to see and start a fire to cook. Right? We think that was like, that's nothing. We're still in that era. We're still there right now. Like, we're still riding horses, and we haven't figured anything out. We haven't figured out how to feed people that don't have food. There's homeless people, mental illness, all that stuff. And people are bent on. I mean, look at this guy running for president in the United States right now. Look at the fucking chaos this guy has brought on this country, and half of this country is voting for him. That's mind-boggling to me. They believe what he says. They're voting for him. How in the hell? So you just got to wake up every day, live your life, try and help somebody else, be the nicest person in the room. That's the only thing you can try and do. Man, that's, if you can do that, you won the day.
For sure.
That's just how I have to look at everything.
I believe, and I share the same opinion in many ways. We are here for such a very brief period of time. We just have this concept and this idea, this perception that we have hours and days and months and years, and from our perspective, it does feel like a lifetime, but it's really, really short, really, and we're just so sold by the experience, and we got sold by the ideas of the exchange of things, monetary things nowadays, because it's obviously quite recent that we have central banks and governments running all of that. There was always an exchange throughout history, but things have only just intensified, and throughout history you can always see that money and possessions and things they only create problems, really, because people are fighting because they need and want more land in order to have more power, to have more resources. It's just it's an insanity, the way that we experience and live. But there's no running around. We all need money. We're still gonna need money. If it's gonna be cryptocurrency in the future, who knows? But somehow there will always be some form of exchange in order to get something out of something, not something out of nothing, but something out of something. And
things will get better.
Yeah, I mean, I would really hope so. I just finished watching a series on Netflix that it does scare me a lot. Turning Point, about everything that happened from before the First World War all the way up to Russia invading Ukraine, and the Cold War, and I mean, it's just unbelievable how close we have been, and we just don't know, for absolute Armageddon and absolute, like, we literally live in a world that the extermination of the human species is plausible. It's something that it's not far-fetched. It's not a movie from Hollywood or anything like that, and that scares the shit out of me, because people are fucking insane. They have no fucking...
Check out who Lex Friedman is.
Yeah, of course.
It's a podcast. He's got a guest on right now. There's all of his clips going through TikTok. I've been catching one by one. His guest is, and she wrote a book on nuclear war, and basically her book is what happens from the time the button is pushed.
I've listened to the
podcast. It's not the political end of it. Yeah. Check out what she has to say, man. How devastating nuclear war and that bomb actually is, and how easily it could happen and how irreversible the effects are from the time the Intercontinental ICBM, when that button is pushed, which is, it could be 30 seconds after a satellite detects a launch from another country. So if Russia launched an ICBM, we have satellites so capable that she said that they can pick up the traces of the fuel, the heat signature of the missile within like less than a second of launch, and then we go into launch mode. We don't wait for that. We don't wait. We fire. So once that button is pushed, it's irreversible. You can't recall that missile. You can't detonate it in outer space. You can't change the coordinates. These are pre-locked in things. So once the button is pushed, then the subs, which are off of both of our coasts, Russia has, no, those are 30-minute missile deliveries. The subs are like 8-minute missile deliveries. Russia has subs right off our east coast. We have subs off their east coast. But the devastation of these bombs and how easily this could happen, it's like you just got to wake up every day, be glad you're alive, go to work, be nice to people, help somebody, don't do drugs, save your money, live a minimalistic, live within your budget, don't go out buying things you can't afford. And so many people with credit debt and all this stuff, stay out of debt, live your life simple as you can. If you can live it better than that, or but I keep things very simple in life, very simple.
What do you do for entertainment for yourself? Like, because most people, they will, like you said, they will buy something, they will aim for even an experience, like say traveling or going out to a specific restaurant or buying new clothes because you just want to feel good about yourself. Is there anything in particular? Like I myself, I collect music memorabilia. That's my thing. I collect records and everything from the acts that I work with, and obviously the acts that put me on this path in life. My heroes. So that's kind of like sometimes it's a bit ridiculous, and I can actually observe me being like, oh, I've already got 10 Led Zeppelin 4s on vinyl. Why do I need the 11th one? You know what I mean? But I'm like, well, there are worse vices. I'm not the kind of person that obviously that owning a house and having a car and having those things like that. It's cool, but I think I don't have any sort of I don't live my life based. I don't do anything that I do because of the money. Obviously, the money is important because of what I just said. We are in this world, and that's how we will navigate this world. You have bills to pay, and you wanna go and eat out and whatever. But it's not the end. The end objective, basically. That the amount of money that you're gonna make. It's more about, like you said, experiencing and sharing moments with people that you want to be around, that you appreciate, they appreciate you back, and all of that. But with all of this in mind, tell me a little bit like minimalistic. I watched actually a documentary a while back about it, and I was almost like, oh my god, I need to get rid of stuff. And I know people that actually did get rid of a lot of stuff. What do you do? What hobbies have you got, Mike?
Well, I don't own anything. I'm very minimalistic. I live in an Airbnb where I am right now. I move around once a month. I'm in a different Airbnb. I like change. A lot of people don't like change. I've been gifted with. I'm so used to change. I love change, and also it's in our industry because we're freelance. Most people would have a heart attack if their job was coming to an end in X number of days and they were going to be unemployed. And we're like, we breeze through that because we're used to it, and we kind of have our ways figured out of how to get through that. So, but I've always been very minimalistic. I don't own anything. I don't collect anything. I don't have anything material. Life is just easier for me that way. I like my 2 suitcases and backpack, and it's kind of. But what I do is I work on myself, like health issues. I'm in the gym. When I'm home, I'm in the gym every other day. Even on tour, I try and be. It's hard sometimes to get beat up. But I like going to the gym and hiking and eating well. Food is my only expense. If I spend money on anything, it's food. Because I like to eat well. And I'm not talking about sitting down for nice, expensive dinners at all. I'm talking about organic foods and smoothies and green food. On the road, that's what I do. I hunt down juice bars and smoothie bars every day. That's kind of my. But I get food, just good food. That doesn't have to be much, but just quality food. So it also helps me deal with everything that we deal with on the road. Just I'm 57 years old, physically a little bit beat up. So to keep inflammation off the body, not drinking alcohol is a big thing. Getting a balanced diet and eating foods that are anti-inflammatory and good for your brain health, because it's what we got to do. It's what I have to do.
You know? I'm with you.
So that is my hobby, and I've been doing that almost my entire life. Vegetarian, 80% of my life, and I got into eating well in my early 20s, and I figured out early on that made me feel really good. So when I ate a green salad as a kid, I just got this energy rush from it, and I felt good. It was the alkaline balancing the acid, and everyone's blood level is either at high or low on one side or the other. So food makes me feel good, and that's my thing, and that's all I do. So I'm in Whole Foods every day getting my smoothies and salads, and in the gym every day. So like right now where I'm staying, I have a great gym down the street. So I'm in the gym for about 2 hours, and then I go up the street a little bit. There's mountains all around me. Like yesterday I was at 7,000 foot elevation in the mountains. Normal day, I go to the gym, there's a 2,200 foot mountain right up the street from me. So I park at the bottom of that, and I walk up that pretty briskly. I'm a good hiker, good walker, but I cruise up that. It takes an hour to get up, and then at the top, hang out up there a little bit because it's super beautiful and it's just mountains. It's just there's nothing there, you know. And take that in for a minute, breathe. I've been going up there doing some breathing exercises lately. I take a whole bottle of water up there. I'll drink a lot of water. So I'll sit up there and just that's where I appreciate life. When I get to the top of that mountain and I'm looking down on all these beautiful hills in LA. And now lately I've been having the same experience every time I go up here. Is I sit there and I do these breathing exercises, and I look around at these hills and the oceans on the other side of this mountain, and I just look at my life, and I realize and I acknowledge that I have no problems. It's hard to ever come to a point where you feel like you accomplished something in your life, because I'm always wanting to do more, and there's a lot I want to do in this business that I haven't done. So I don't feel like I've gotten anywhere. But when I can sit up on this mountain and look, and I can understand, I can at least let myself relax, knowing that I have gotten somewhere, that I've accomplished something. And I've been in LA 23 years now. I've never been unemployed. It's always been good to me here. And so I have that moment every day when I hike up that hill at the end of my day, and I can at least take a breath and say, this is my life. You know.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's gotten important to me. It's very nice. So
because this revolves back to my previous question, and that sounds very spiritual to me. When you're up there and just having this moment with yourself, and you're expressing gratitude towards the universe, because I mean, I'm the same. I do the same thing. Like every day when I go out for a run, I always am very grateful for the fact that I have a pair of legs, that pair of lungs, and that I can move, that I'm nourishing this temple, in a good way, and it's the small things, isn't it? I mean, we're here to experience life in whichever way is more cheerful and playful for each individual, but there are some wouldn't say basics, but like for me there are basics that you seem to have a relation to as well, which is the fact that you want to be good to people, and you want to be good obviously to yourself, and experience things in the most positive way, and be grateful for waking up and having a bed that you can actually, and a roof over your head, and that's I think that's possibly one of the main things that we are here to experience. This realization that nothing from the external world will bring you peace, will bring you happiness, will bring you joy, or bring you sadness for the matter. It's all within ourselves and how we relate to the experience. And obviously the experience can be very overwhelming. I mean, obviously that we go through periods of stress. That might happen on a daily basis. It's all about leveling it up and trying to maintain a level of happiness and of contentment per se, more than anything else, because we will navigate all the emotions, every single day of our lives. It's a matter of like trying to find always a way to stay more on a positive vibration than anything else, really.
100%. So it's also, it's look, I've been very lucky my dream came true in life. The whole thing about life is figuring out what you want to do, what makes you happy, and then doing that. So a lot of people aren't doing there's a lot of people who hate their job. There's a lot of people go to work every day and hate their job. They're not. So we're kind of lucky, and I've been really lucky to, I don't, as far as I'm concerned, I don't work for a living. I think about that all the time. It's like, I'm either at work on the road or I'm at home. Either one, I'm enjoying the day pretty much. I'm either at the gym, hiking, or I'm on tour. They're both the same to me. It's like, you were out there with us. You saw how I kind of work on the road. Is I don't stress about a lot. I think things out. I'm very methodical. I do like to do everything the same way every day for the most part. I'm very methodical, and it drives me crazy when other people aren't. And there's some people just don't think. Repetition is our friend on the road. Load in, load out, the way we set up everything, what we do, everybody doing their job mostly the same way every day. That's what helps make our day easy and get through. So I apply that to life in general. I like a little bit of structure in my life that way. But yeah, man, there's nothing to complain about. I got nothing to complain about. And no worries. I just want to work more, and I just want to work all the time. I really don't. I'm not that person that needs a day off. Man, I'm on tours all the time, and people are, the funny thing is people saying, I can't wait 1 more week, 4 more shows, we get to go home, and we're at, like, 4 more shows, what? You're going to go home, and then you're going to start looking for another job. Like, what's wrong with this one? Like, you're here right now. What are you complaining you got to go home for? Like, are there people, I'm just not that person. People all the time, man, I can't wait to get some time off. Like, I'm fine. I don't need any day off.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like that in feature film too. Films, everybody towards the end of the film is racing to get done with it because they want some time off. This film's been killing me, blah, blah. The moment you get home, your ass is making calls and online looking for another job. Like, it's going to somehow be different than the one you have.
Exactly. Yeah. I always.
So we're super lucky. I mean, our job is pretty good. You got, Carl, our life is pretty good. It's not anything to take lightly what we get to do for a living. And that's a big realization I have all the time. Is like, we get to do this. We get to go through. I'm talking about like your day. You can chop it up. It's how you handle things, man. How you interpret things. You can say there's a lot of downtime in our day. You can use that downtime to learn. We got an iPhone in your hand. It's an educational tool. To me, social media is an educational tool for me. You hear people talk about social media negatively sometimes. These kids wasting time. It's what you choose to look at on social media. My algorithms on my TikTok, on my Instagrams, it's educational stuff. It's a learning tool. You get in the right algorithms. So, I use that time efficiently if I can. But all the things you deal with on the road, it's all little stuff, man. You're still living a good life. You're living the life you chose to live. And you're lucky to get to do it because just not everybody is. Most people, they want, what's that saying? Everybody wants the life they think you have or something like that. They're on the outside looking in. We're on the inside looking out. It's two different views for sure. But you do have to step out and get the big picture and look down on this and go, it's pretty damn Okay.
Michael, my friend, what a
I love
place!
people.
What a place
Yeah.
to for us to wrap up this wonderful conversation, man. Very inspirational what you just said now. That the ending was just it was I wasn't even thinking of the ending, but it's just so encompasses basically so much in what you just said. And I'm very grateful for you to share a bit of your story and how do you see the world, how do you live your life. I think it's inspirational, and I think people can take a lot out of it. And yeah, we indeed very lucky to live the life that we do, to work on what we do. And I think the message could also be that people should always try and find something. I know for people sometimes life gets on the way, families have kids, they have to put food on the table, things like that. But we can't lose ourselves in this existence. I was going to, I need to rephrase what I was going to say. Just navigate this existence in a way that doesn't bring you fulfillment. Because there are ways
Hmm.
to bring fulfillment into your life, even though you might be doing right now a job that you don't like doing it. If you have an intent, if you have an interest, if you create the discipline, and
Hmm.
and put the intent out there, you can change things, you can build things, but things don't change overnight. Your life didn't develop overnight. My life, my professional life, I mean, our professional careers, they don't happen overnight, and sometimes they don't even happen when you want it. It happens when it has to happen. I firmly believe on that. At least for me, it's basically how my life has been evolving. And
Hmm.
once again,
Oh, you're staying pretty busy. You're staying very busy.
very busy, non-stop. Yeah.
And you should be. You were a pleasure to tour with. I got to spend a lot of time with you. You were very efficient. You noticed a weekend of this tour. For those that don't know, we just spent a month on the road together doing Porno Pyros and Tiger Cup. But you were efficient. You were consistent every single day. Nobody ever worried about anything with you guys. You guys were what a band should be, um, for all bands, us and everyone else, is on time and know your place everywhere and awareness. Our job, 80% of being who you are in our industry, is just having great self awareness of everything. And uh, I can't say enough about how cool it was, and it's translating in your career because you look at all the work you have lined up right now. You're a busy person. So you have the gift, and I'm sure that you probably, like me, a big part of going to work every day is I love all the people I work with. Like I love the personalities. We get to work with very smart people. There's not a lot of dummies in this business. Most people in our business that we work with, they're smart. They figured out you, you know how to get here first of all, but they're good at their job. They're smart people. So we're surrounded by good people, and so I look forward to every day, going in and doing that stuff. But to your um, to your credit, you've got a lot of good work coming up, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you over the summertime too.
For sure, for sure. I hope so.
Now
I
we're going to
hope
run into
so.
each other at some festivals in Europe somewhere,
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah. Hopefully,
somewhere.
hopefully.
Yeah, or I'll see you in the UK. But man, you're doing good work, and again, it was a pleasure. Can't thank you enough, and me and you will keep in touch.
For sure. I can't thank you enough because you're the hero. You're the one that I was very impressed by how you um, conducted everything on the day to day with your calmness, with your precision, with the intent of help. Always trying to help, always trying to make things work in the best possible way, even though you're not even working with my camp, but you end up in one way or another working with us, and it made
Hmm.
our life so
We
much
all work
easier and
together.
so helpful, and
Hmm.
um, and there's a lot of people in this industry that even on the higher ranks that won't have the same attitude that you had. So again, thank you. It was a pleasure, and it's great to talk to you today. And I'm sure we're gonna be crossing paths sometime soon again, Michael.
we're all out there to have fun. Our job should be fun, and everybody should be happy, and everybody should be